Hey everybody, this is Olga, your spirituality / metaphysics obsessed YouTube friend over here. So let's talk about what you resist persists, because I feel like that's such a huge part of our lives. And especially when you start becoming more aware of your thinking and you are more interested in consciously creating / aligning to a different reality, that's when this issue becomes more and more apparent. So I know Neville had written on this as well, but today I wanted to actually read from Emmett Fox's The Golden Key and 22 additional essays, because I feel like it really sums it up nicely, and there's like this tiny little one-page essay that's called No Reality in Evil, and I'm just going to read most of it to you and then we'll talk more about this. So here's what it says. Never recognize evil as having any reality. Never granted the courtesy of the slightest or most formal acquiescence. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, because I never use that word. But I'm a foreigner, so I'm allowed, okay? Whatever. Even though you may not be able to demonstrate over error for the time being, still you must not recognize it as having any power or reality. Every time you speak or think of evil as having any power, you give it that much power. I feel like this is the main point here. Every time you allow it to scare you, you give it that much authority. Always fight error in thought, not in the sense of struggling with it, but fight it in the sense of knowing that it is only false belief. Do not let it rest quietly in thought, but harass it. And then I'm just going to skip this little part. And at the end, he says, the only attitude for the metaphysical student is, I believe in divine harmony and nothing else. I do not believe that there's any power in evil, and it is not going to get any recognition from me. Yeah, so basically what Emmett was saying here is that you literally give authority to whatever it is that you don't want in your life by thinking about it. And this is definitely something that Neville also talks about, and I feel like a lot of spiritual teachers as well. The point here is basically whatever you dedicate your attention to is what you're reinforcing in your life. I want you to think about your thoughts in general as an investment. It's basically an investment into your future. Well, there is no future technically because everything is happening right now. Our awareness is always operating right now. So whatever thoughts you're thinking right now, you are basically determining a lot of your future and investing into your future with those thoughts. And you want to be wise with your investments, right? You don't want to just waste it on stupid shit that you don't want in your life. You don't want to buy stuff that you don't need at all. Like if this was your money, you wouldn't want to just waste it on anything, right? That's kind of how I want you to think about your thoughts. And in an ideal world, we would all be thinking great thoughts. Everything would be positive and hunky-dory, like everything would be great. But since we live in this very interesting quote-unquote reality where things are often very different, this is where you have to realize how powerful you are when it comes to choosing your thoughts. So I just want to remind you that, and I'm sure you've heard this before if you're into these spiritual teachings and conscious reality creation, that you don't attract, quote unquote, what you want, but you attract what you are. So whether this is something that you want or don't want or are afraid of, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You still attract it. I mean, I guess attracting it is not the best way to describe it. I feel like we're aligning ourselves to a certain reality. But you get my point, right? So basically you just get on the same level vibrationally, or however you want to define it, with that thing that you identify yourself with, whether it's something positive or negative or neutral. And so just to give you an example, and it's probably a really silly one for most of you, but to me it's not silly because I have an arachnophobia, so I've been very much afraid of spiders pretty much for as long as I can remember. And living in our current condo, we've been having a real problem with spiders for the past few years, especially during the warm months. And it's just crazy how it snowballed from seeing them every now and then to literally seeing them every single day. And that was very distressing to me, honestly. I used to be at a point where I would not be able to fall asleep if I had seen a spider in that room the same day. So yeah, it was pretty bad. Anyway, it got to the point where I was always so afraid and worried about seeing them that I would expect it to happen. Anytime I would walk into the bathroom, which is usually where they were majority of the time, I would be like freaking out in this expectation of seeing one, you know? And this is exactly what conscious reality creation is. When you identify with a certain state so much, you are living in this expectation of something happening. But it's totally up to you whether it's something positive or negative, right? So like the more you dwell on it, on something negative, for example, the more likely it's going to happen. I mean, it is going to happen sooner or later. So this was just a good example because it was something that was kind of like reoccurring day after day after day. And I really didn't know how to deal with it. I think that I tried so hard to like convince myself that I'm not afraid of them, like this is not a big deal, blah, 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 but like nothing really worked. But what that situation helped me realize even more than I did before, because it was just so constant and pertinent in my reality at that point. I mean, I can think of a lot more examples, like, you know, being ill and just all this stuff, right? Basically, it's any example where you have a certain reality that you don't want, and it's kind of repeating itself over and over and over, day after day after day. So what that has taught me is that there are two basic ways of dealing with that. One of them is making it a conscious effort to switch your attention to something else. As soon as you have those thoughts and expectations, you're like, oh shit, I just know that like when I'm going to walk into that bathroom, I'm going to see another one. It's freaking me out. Why is this happening? And so like you go down this whole rabbit hole of thinking, you know, of negative thinking and expectation of something that you don't want. So instead, you would then immediately, if you're aware of that thought, and once again, this is where meditation really helps because it helps you to quiet your mind and become very much aware of your thinking. So you would then switch your thoughts to, it could literally be anything else. And I tried to associate it with something I actually want in my life. So instead, I would think something like, I'm so excited how my business is flourishing, or like my relationship is amazing, everything has been so awesome, or whatever it is that's like on your mind and whatever it is that you want to happen. So this way, you're kind of tricking your mind to also remember to affirm for stuff that you want. And this is why I kind of like this approach. But it does take a lot of practice, and it kind of has to become your habit at some point. So you're just kind of redirecting your attention to something that you actually want instead of dwelling on something that you don't want and recreating it, right? And I feel like this approach can help a lot, but I feel like a more helpful approach to start with is to actually kind of become okay with the fact that it might happen. Yes, when I walk into that bathroom, I might see a spider, it might be unpleasant, but it's okay. It's fine. It's not, you know, this is not something that I have to deal with forever. This is not, let's say, like a life-threatening situation. It's just an unpleasant situation that I know I can deal with, and it's a temporary thing, okay? So like, or even in my case, just even accepting the fact that spiders are also creatures that have the right to be here with us, right? And they're actually very important creatures for the ecosystems and for our planet. I mean, every creature on our planet has its place. Spiders are definitely important as well, and they're highly intelligent, apparently. All the stuff I never wanted to know about them. But anyway, so like, the more you kind of neutralize it in your mind, and you're like, you don't even have to understand why you had this phobia. You don't have to like, you can, but you don't have to like really dig deeper and like figure out why you have those thoughts. Like, where did they come from? Was this a one scary situation that you had as a kid? Or like, could this be something from a past life or whatever? You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. I mean, if you feel like it's going to help you, then sure, go with that. But I feel like to me, yes, I can think of like a few examples when I got really scared of spiders, but I can't really, there's nothing really that therapeutic in realizing that to me personally. Instead, I'm trying to deal with it in real time and kind of realizing that, okay, if it happens It happens, okay? Like, I can't control every single one of my thoughts. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. That's okay. It's something I can live with. Yes, it's annoying as hell, but if it happens, basically. And I will move on from this. That's what's really important as well. So, like, kind of realizing that, okay, like, if that's what's going to happen, then fine. It is what it is. That means I have not aligned myself to a reality yet where there are no spiders around me. So I would start with that, and then I would go into like, okay, and now I'm going to switch to a more positive thought that I actually want to experience in my life. So what I just talked about before this, and just kind of redirecting my attention to something that I want. And I actually also really want to mention that you can take certain actions. So for example, I know Neville always talks about like the fact that you don't really have to take any action per se, unless it's inspired action, in which case it doesn't even feel like action. It's just something that you feel inspired to do, and it's kind of like automatic. But in my case with the spiders again, at some point I got so fed up with this, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm just gonna get an exterminator to like take care of this problem, right? And the reason why that helped is not necessarily because the exterminator was super effective. I tend to think that it wasn't actually that effective, to be honest. But it helped me feel like it's possible to not see the spiders again. You know what I mean? For the same reason, if you're trying to lose weight, for example, and you keep affirming to yourself that losing weight is so natural and easy to me, it's effortless, it's yada, 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 yada. But, I mean, we've been conditioned for so long, for most of our lives, years and years and years of our lives, that it's impossible to lose weight without doing anything, that for us to change that paradigm completely, it would take a while. Unless you all of a sudden became this enlightened being and everything is just easy peasy for you. So this is why even if you work out a little bit, just even a few minutes a day, if during those minutes you keep affirming to yourself and like really getting into that state of feeling like this is working, I am losing weight, I'm feeling amazing, I look great, I love the way my body feels and looks, and that can be really effective just because you are still taking this action, however small, and it's reinforcing this idea that this is going to work versus just sitting there and affirming to yourself and hoping that it's going to work. You know what I mean? So it just really depends on, and Neville also mentions this, it's all about your conviction. Like how deeply and truly do you believe that this is possible? If you are pretending to believe that this is possible, that's one thing. And that's okay. And usually at the beginning, that's exactly how it is. But if you know deep inside, and you just have to be honest with yourself, and that's totally okay. Like this is how you learn. This is how you move through this and figure shit out. So if you know deep inside that you don't believe that this is possible, then take some little action that would make you feel like you are helping to co-create this reality for yourself. And leave the rest to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it, to your subconscious. So if you do feel like you are dealing with something that you really don't want in your life, please become as aware as possible of the thoughts and expectations that you have anytime they come up, And again, when they do, my biggest advice is either redirecting it immediately if this is what you're comfortable with, but I would highly suggest spending some time really dwelling on this idea that, okay, this is a part of my reality right now. Whether I created this consciously, unconsciously, whatever, it doesn't matter. You don't have to blame yourself for anything. What's the point of doing that, right? But just realizing that it might happen or it might not happen, and that's okay. If it happens, I'll deal with that, but I would much prefer if it didn't. So this way you kind of like lessen the charge of the situation because you're diffusing this energy of expecting it and being worried about it and dwelling on it. You're diffusing it with, okay, well, then it is what it is. And then also adding on to this, just using it for your highest good, basically. So redirecting it towards something that you do actually want in your life. And this is a great way to help you remember, affirm for stuff that you want, because I feel like for some reason we're a lot more likely to focus on shit that we don't want. And at least, I'm speaking for myself, I guess, but it just comes more natural for some reason, right? especially in the beginning of this journey when you're really trying to consciously create shit. So you get like all this resistance coming up and you have to deal with it. So basically, I'm just saying that you can also use it for your good. You don't have to let it drag you down with it. And just remember that what you resist persists. So you don't want to keep resisting stuff. You want to actually somehow figure out a way to use it in a more or less positive way in your life. But again, in an ideal world, as I read that part of the essay by Emmett Fox, the best way is to just completely ignore anything that you don't want in your life. But the reason why I went into this whole explanation about what to do with it is because I feel like it's so much easier said than done. Like just ignore it, pretend like it's not there. Yeah, like maybe eventually it is going to be easier to ignore it, but it does take a little bit of work. It does take kind of getting used to. So that's kind of like the ultimate goal. Basically, the best way to live a life is focusing on what you want and you love and investing your attention and thoughts into that reality. Completely ignoring anything that you would rather not have or not witness or whatever, and anything that you don't want in your reality. So that's kind of like the ultimate goal of this whole thing. But again, I realize that we're all human and it's just... sometimes it's like this advice, you don't really know what to do with it. You're like, how am I supposed to ignore this? Like, if it's such a big part of my reality every day. So this is why I felt like it could be helpful to you guys if I went into what's been working for me. But remember that it's always a work in progress, and it's okay. You'll have some good days, some bad days. That's totally fine. This is what life is about. Don't expect it to be all perfect and shit. That's not why we're here anyway. We're here to learn and evolve and experience stuff. Whether it's quote-unquote good or bad or neutral or whatever. Well, everything's technically neutral, as they say. But our ego doesn't think that. So anyways, before I ramble on and on, as I always do, hopefully I made my point and hopefully this was helpful to you guys. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing to me. That would really, really mean a lot to me, and it would really help spread this message to others. Other than that, have an amazing time becoming the master manifestor I know you can be, and you also know you can be, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to all this. Have an awesome day or night, and I'll see you all next time. Okay, bye.